Hello. This is really nice. I wasn't sure if anyone would come with the sun shining. Welcome to Venue Vision, developing the future of grassroots music venues. My name's Bev. I run Music Venue Trust, which hopefully most of you know is the charity created to protect, secure, and improve grassroots music venues across the UK. Now, every year for the last few years, we've produced one of these, which is an annual report, which is not usually very cheery reading, because it brings together actual statistics about the situation for grassroots music venues across the four nations of the UK. And it reveals things like the fact that the average profit margin for a grassroots music venue is 2.5%, which is obviously not really a profit margin, and that 38% of venues made no profit at all. Usually, when we launch this report, we then go around the country doing events in Scotland, Wales, and this year we actually did Northern Ireland. And what's great about the report this year is we have double-page spreads about each of the nations specifically. So if you are from Scotland, you can see the stats for grassroots music venues in Scotland. We have them for Wales, and a few weeks ago, we actually did an event in Stormont for the first time where we had Northern Ireland stats. So we're really, really committed to looking at the whole UK, not just England, like a lot of UK music industry stuff unfortunately does. And part of the reason we're super committed to that is we work with a network of over 800 venues across the whole UK, and every venue is important to us. And one of the real basics of Music Venue Trust has always been that when a venue in a major city closes, that's sad. But when a venue in a small town, small city, or a rural location closes, that's an absolute tragedy, because that is the only venue for the local community and for people in that area to go to and dream of one day maybe working in music, not necessarily as a musician, but maybe as someone who works in promotion or management or as a tech, or someone who does something ancillary but complementary. Maybe you dream of being a professional photographer, she says, looking at Yannicka in the front. And if those venues disappear within local communities, you end up with the really ridiculous situation where only people born in major cities could dream of a creative career. And that obviously is stupid. So part of what we've always done at MVT is work on the mission to protect, secure, and improve grassroots music venues. And over 12 years, we think we've pretty much won the argument now as to why grassroots music venues need protecting and securing. A lot of people know what a grassroots music venue is. A lot of people understand the argument that if you lose the grassroots, you lose entry levels, you're not going to have talent in the future, not only on the stage, but also supporting that in the stage. And a lot of those advances are now moving forward. So one of the things that we've worked on since 2018 was the concept of a levy. And hopefully most of you have read about the grassroots levy, this idea that £1 on a concert ticket at a large scale event, a venue over 5,000, will be reinvested in the grassroots. We worked on this concept for a number of years, and then our friends at Enter Shikari decided to do a tour and prove it could be done, even £1 within a £45 ticket. And that showed the way for other artists to come on board, and Music Venue Trust was shown support by Sam Fender, by Katy Perry, and by Coldplay. And then this has now grown into an industry-wide initiative. And although it's still voluntary and not every large-scale concert has it, if you buy a big ticket, you will hopefully see that a lot of arena and stadium tickets now do have a £1 levy on it. And the reason for doing this is we wanted to get to the improve bit of our mission to protect, secure, and improve. And this is about the future of grassroots music venues, not because of the buildings, but because the grassroots music venues are at the center of what is needed for the grassroots ecosystem. So everything that we do for our investment projects for this venue vision of developing a future is about the venues and the people who work in them, the artists who will play in them, the promoters who will use them. So all of the projects that I'm now going to run you through and try and not run out of 15 minutes are about those things. So I'm going to tell you about our investment projects, which are all detailed in these books. I've put 3 piles of them. There's one at the front and there's a couple at the back. Please take one if you're interested. If you don't have a bag to put one in, it's also a PDF on the Music Venue Trust website. So you'll be able to read about all the projects here. But I am going to rattle through what these projects are and why, because these are the projects that are now part funded by the money from the levy from Live Trust. They're also, I have to say, largely funded by Coldplay, who've been very generous and given us a big donation. So whether you like their music or not, Coldplay are brilliant because they're very, very generous. And we're very grateful to them. So project number 1, Off the Grid, and Olaf referenced this in the intro. One of the biggest financial constraints on venues and on every business, let's face it, is power bills. And one of the visions that we have for making the grassroots network more sustainable in every way in the long run is to remove the volatility of power bills. So we have now embarked on a project with Community Energy England, Solar Punk, which is the little smiley face, and Music Declares Emergency. And we are trying to install solar panels on as many grassroots music venues as possible. Now, obviously, this is a very long-term project, and we're starting off very carefully with working with venues where they are on the same substation as other venues so that the power they generate can be shared beyond just themselves. We know it's viable. There is a venue in Frome in Somerset called Cheese and Grain that already has solar panels and basically is not really paying power bills anymore. And they run both a venue and a recording studio off that. And so what we want to see is we want to get more venues moved away from excessive power bills, because most of them are on really lousy tariffs, and moved over to being more energy efficient so that the money that they would have spent on the power bills can instead be invested in creative activity. Project number 2, and this is a really important one. If any of you are touring musicians, you will know that touring costs largely consist of transport, food, and hotels. None of those are creative, and it's really, really annoying that that's the large part of what touring costs. So many years ago, a small group of us sat over breakfast and a greasy spoon in Brighton and decided that one of the major things we wanted to do was build artist accommodation into a lot of grassroots music venues. Obviously, not all of them have got the space, but some of them have. And so we have now embarked on a project in partnership with a brilliant organisation called Volunteer It Yourself, which is a training project for NEETs, young people not in education or employment. And those young people come along and do construction and decorating projects supervised by professionals. They work in partnership with Travis Perkins, so a lot of the materials are given to the project at a reduced price, and the young people learn the skills for construction to either go onto a seat in guilds or get more work. And so working with Volunteer It Yourself means that we're also making sure that there's a social good in the development of the project, as well as creating the artist accommodation. I visited the first one of these on site, which was Voodoo Daddies in Norwich recently, which was brilliant, talking to a bunch of 16-year-olds painting skirting boards and telling me how they'd had no sleep, but they were enjoying the painting. That project has already led to bookings from 3 international bands that could not possibly have gone to Norwich if it were not for the reduced price accommodation the venue is now able to offer them. And the concept of this accommodation is it won't benefit just the venue it's in, but it will also be available to venues around the area. So that accommodation in Norwich is for any venue in Norwich. And we are currently building a map of a spine of venues up the UK. We're also trying to map artist accommodation that already exists. We know of a few places. Bannerman's very famously has artist accommodation in its own venues. There are a few others. And what we hope to do is have a network of projects where touring is cheaper because your accommodation is cheaper. Feel at Home, it's a partnership project to that, again with VIY. Green rooms are not always brilliant. I have spent many years with artists telling me it would be lovely if there was a mirror with good light where the artists of any gender can put their makeup on before they go on stage and they don't have to go to the loos to do it. Feel at Home is about upgrading green room space. And again, we are looking at all across the UK venues we can do this project with, as we are for Raise the Standard. Imagine touring around the country if you knew that everywhere you went, the backline would be of consistent quality when you got there. And you didn't need to take a whole bunch of kit with you. You could just take the odd guitar or a saxophone or something different, idiosyncratic, if you needed it, but everything else would already be there. This is the vision for Raise the Standard. What we want to do is get to a point where artists could tour on public transport or in a car, because they know when they rock up at a grassroots music venue, there will be great quality equipment. We've started with microphones, mic stands, some basic things, and this is rolling out. And the other key point about this project is it moves away from venues having to buy and maintain and replace their own equipment. The equipment will basically be owned by Music Venue Trust and leased out, and a virtual warehouse will ensure that if the equipment breaks, it gets replaced and returned, maintained, passed on. It's a much more environmentally sustainable, but also cheaper way of venues having decent equipment and artists knowing that they can rely on great kit when they turn up at a venue. Little bit different is Venue MOT. We have run an emergency response service for many, many years, which helps venues in trouble. Some of that's planning, some of that's licensing. A lot of it these days is financial. We've learned from doing that over the last 10 years. And so what we're now doing is rolling out a program of quite boring sounding tools, but things that will help venues run the back end of things much more efficiently, so that, again, they can save money in their general operations, and that money can be more available for the creative side of things, because venues want to put artists on. They're not there to do the boring shit. They're there to do the program. They're there to welcome the audiences. So although this is the dry bit, it's also very, very important. And then this is the exciting one. This is Liveline. So again, in the report, if you flick through it, you will see that the touring circuit in the UK has massively shrunk over the last few years. And you all know loads of national tours think they've done Scotland if they come to Glasgow. Liveline is about trying to ensure that gigs happen in more places, that tours will go to more towns and cities. And it does that by underwriting risk. It's not grant funding. It's not, we'll give you loads of money if you go to this place. It's that if you put forward a great tour that does something that you wouldn't be able to do, or you're not sure you'll be able to do, Liveline will put up the money to underwrite the risk, so that if you make a loss, that can be covered. But if you make a profit, you don't need our money, and we'll give it to someone else. So it's a really exciting project, and we're working on that in partnership with Save Our Scenes, who are much more expert about the electronic music scene than Music Venue Trust has ever been, because we're really committed to supporting electronic artists as well as the more traditional artists that a lot of people associate with Music Venue Trust. And we're also working with Association of Independent Promoters. And I believe there's going to be a big announcement in July about a new rollout of funding for that. So please keep an eye on any of those three organisations' socials if you want to find out more about funding for tours across the UK. That was really, really fast. If you've got a question, please put your hand up, and there is a roving mic that will come to you, but I will be here afterwards, and I'm here all day. So you can absolutely ask me anything if it's not covered in the books. Did anyone want to ask anything? Yes, can you just hold on for...
How do you define a grassroots music venue?
So a grassroots music venue, we wrote the definition in 2015, and it's now basically an internationally accepted one. There's an elephant test. If you go to a place and you say, what's the venue where artists start out, and people name you a venue, that's likely to be it. And then we cross-check that with, is music at the heart of what they do? You're not a grassroots music venue if your main thing is selling beer and food and you stick a musician in the corner. You're a grassroots music venue if everything you do is built around the fact that you put on live music. So they are mostly smaller spaces, but it's not defined by capacity. And we even have some really huge venues who've got a smaller room. So, for example, the Royal Albert Hall, not a grassroots music venue, has the Elgar room, which has got 140 cap, I think. And you can become a grassroots music venue by setting up a venue with the creation of new music or nurturing musicians at the heart, programming music, and then applying to join the Music Venues Alliance, which is where we get our over 800 venues from. And it's a simple online form where you just tell us a bunch of stuff about what you do. And then our wonderful membership coordinator, Lala, will have a conversation with you about whether you're already doing what we perceive to be a grassroots music venue. But there are new people joining actually all the time. It's about intent. Grassroots music venue is about intent. If it's about putting on live music, nurturing talent, bringing new music to people, then, and you operate in one of the 4 nations of the UK, you should definitely get in touch with Music Venue Trust. Any more? Yes. Can you just hold on a minute, please?
What do you think that larger venues could do to help grassroots venues?
So the really interesting thing is a lot of people think larger venues are rolling in money, and they're really not, because their power bills are hideous as well, and so are their rents and everything else. The thing that larger venues can do is have the conversation about the grassroots levy with the promoters that you're working with, because the point of the levy was always intended to be that the whole industry committed to it. It's not a responsibility of an arena and stadium. It's about the team that puts on those events. So in the instance of Katy Perry, for example, it was Katy Perry's agent that suggested the levy was put on it. Enter Shikari definitely worked with Wembley Arena to do that one there. But yeah, the point that what a big venue can do is be part of the conversation about being an active contributor to the ecosystem. And this is really only going to work if everyone shows willing to do it, because if not, unfortunately, the government will legislate that it will happen, and that will get a whole lot more complicated. So Music Venue Trust are big fans of it being a voluntary levy and it working. But at the moment, there are some parts of the industry that are holding out, and that is the thing that might make it statutory, and then it becomes a lot more complicated.
Do you sort of within the trust, do you see sort of tensions between, let's say established grassroots music venues and then people opening new venues, and then they're being like, well, do you want more new venues to open, or are you about preserving?
Yes.
Or so you're
No. Okay, so we are not a heritage organisation. Preserve has never been in our title. Protect, secure, and improve is in our title. One of the things that's really wonderful about the work we do is the venue community that we've built. We do a national networking event every year, and new venues are always welcome. And there's very much a system of support. In fact, our membership works on, we have subscribed membership where new venues that can't afford much can actually get free membership for a year on a bursary. And that is enabled by more established venues paying more than they have to. We have a friend and a community level membership where they voluntarily cover the costs of other venues, being able to access all our tools. So there isn't a competitive element anymore in the same way that there used to be, because people understand that we're stronger when we work together.
Great, thanks.
For artists who are looking to tour around and get in touch with grassroots venues, is there a directory through Music Venue Trust that we can go to see which ones are?
So we've never committed to doing a directory because people are joining all the time, and it would be impossible to keep it up to date. But one of the things we do have is on our website. If you go to, I think it's called the Gig Guide, there is a map of venues, and a lot of the venues do have their contact details on that. I can't claim it's completely up to date because I don't know the last time it was updated, but it definitely gives you a feel of some of the venues in an area. And quite often, if you do get in touch with a venue, you could ask them, are there venues they're connected to? Because what we're doing is starting to cluster venues for little tour routes. In fact, I was at a conference down in Cornwall the other day, and we got all really excited about a possible route from Wiltshire down to the bottom of Cornwall of venues who were all friendly with each other that could offer like 8 dates or 4 down and 4 back. And so there's a lot more venue clusters coming together as well. So you kind of need to make relationships with a small number, and that hopefully will lead to others.
But it's relationships that are primarily just facilitated by the venues themselves, not through the trust or anything.
It depends. So some venues have got in-house bookers and some work with external promoters. But generally, if you can get hold of them, because they're very small teams and very busy people, they're generally quite friendly. There's a question behind you.
Hi. So you briefly touched on when answering another question about sort of like hurdles and stuff, and I was going to ask you more about that. Like, are there non-cooperative people in the industry who actually are sort of like hurting the process? I'm not going to ask like which specific companies, but like
You could probably guess which specific company is not particularly on board with the levy.
A funny one as well, actually. Which greasy spoon in Brighton was it? Because I used to live in Brighton, and it made me nostalgic.
Sorry, which what?
Which greasy spoon were you talking about?
Oh, I can't remember. One on the end of Jubilee Gardens, just a little one on the corner. It was in the Great Escape one year, and it was just a little corner calf.
Oh, was that Breakfast at Tiffany's? Maybe.
I don't remember. It was many years ago, and I'm old.
Anyway, thank you.
Hi. I was wondering, do you guys work with the government on this stuff, or you guys
Yes.
are separate entity? Okay, good. I was going to
Yeah,
say,
we
because there's been
spend
loads of parliament debates.
Unbelievable
Yeah.
amounts of time in government meetings, and in fact, we work with all the governments of the UK.
Oh,
so,
amazing! Yeah.
as I say, I was very proud 2 weeks ago to have an event in Stormont, which completed my full set of UK Parliament, and we had 12 MLAs, which are the equivalent of MSPs, come to our event. So yeah, we have 4 sets of government meetings a lot of the time. And yeah, that's also why we do the stats for UK wide and then each of the nations, so that we can have those conversations with the relevant officials. It doesn't always work out. I mean, we've just had a real blow this week because we thought we were finally going to get agent of change into legislation in England and Wales. It already is in Scotland because your government are more sensible. And the Lords were pushing for it and the Commons threw it out. So sometimes you work on something for 11 years and then you still don't get there, but we haven't given up.
Yeah, that's great.
Hi, my name's Daniel. I run a platform called the Harmony Dialogue, which is aimed at promoting accessibility in the music industry. I guess my question pertains to what kind of measures have been implemented to support grassroots venues recently when it comes to accessibility and the design. Yeah.
So the challenge for grassroots music venues are they're not purpose-built. Most of them are converted spaces, and that necessarily puts them in buildings for which access is not the primary factor. We have a long relationship with Attitudes Everything. We've always tried to work on access, but it's a long road, and we do have venues that have managed to achieve bronze on their charter. But for a lot of venues, they're not ever going to be fully physically accessible. But what we try and encourage people to do through a project called Ethical Venues, which is about talking about your values, is we're trying to get venues to ensure that their attitudes to important societal, factors, such as access, inclusion, and sustainability, that they're very clear on their comms about how they approach those things. And rather than trying to set standards for access, which would be impossible for somewhere like Voodoo Rooms in Edinburgh, which is always going to be up a horrible flight of stairs, and no lift can ever be put in there and change that, at least they would be able to say, if you have an access need, please contact us and we will do our best. So although we're always looking at trying to do tangible things, we're genuinely at the stage where there's not enough money to do physical things at the moment, but it's about an openness of mind and an attempt to meet people as much as they can. And again, that's been very much part of our work with the Music Venues Alliance, is we can't do everything, but we can try.
And I love that. I think that transparency is definitely key when it comes to accessibility, and just going off of Attitude is Everything. I was a recent future leader with them, so I know that they do amazing work. I've had some mentorship with them, worked at the relaunch last year. and I know that, you know, their toolkit. I do want to kind of highlight as well that there are organizations like mine that are specifically focused on grassroots DIY approaches to accessibility that are intersectional. I think often at times, you know, when it comes to DNI access, it's like kind of, it's still very much seen as like a tick box.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much that can be done from inception and, you know, as an alternative approach rather than just, you know, physical design. There are other things, and I think it is about, you know, having conversations like that, and just more of them, because organizations like mine do exist and we're very small and we're growing. And yeah, just opening that up there as well.
Let's talk.
Yeah, that would be great. But yeah, it sounds like you guys are doing amazing work. And yeah,
Thank you.
thank you for this.
I'm guessing we're completely out of time because I've gone well over my 15 minutes, but thank you. I am around all day. So come and find me if you've got any more questions.